So, everybody can see my screen?
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is the introduction to D3, and it's a library for web-based visualization. So it's a library that you load on your website, and then you're able to load data and then create a website based on that data. So it's really data-driven documents, which is what the D3 stands for, which is what I say here. So yeah. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with it. I've put here a few links to galleries of things that people made with this. I'll just show it. Like this is a list of indigenous communities, and you can see the color, the communities, and all of this is created based on a data file. So you can change the data and the whole graph will change. So that allows you to update things really easily if you have different data. You can reuse the entire website, but show a totally different image. Other one. So these are word clouds based on what people said in the last American election. So the blue ones were said more by Democrats, and the red ones were said more by Republicans. So you can see that Republicans are more focused on business and they say government a lot more. And the Democrats are more focused on middle class, health, that sort of stuff. And again, these are all generated based on the data. So they load in the data in their website, and it automatically generates all these graphs for you. Let's see. And these are, yeah, this is film data, so you can see which actors which actors worked with which directors, and you can see how they're all related to each other. So you can see that Wes Anderson, they work a lot together with these people. And again, this is all data that's being scraped from some source, and then you can use that data to create all these graphs. So yeah, that's kind of what you can do with D3. So let's close that. So what we're going to do today is some really basic website building. I'm going to introduce vector graphics, and then we'll start with the low-level D3. And at the end, I'll showcase some pre-made D3 libraries. I would highly recommend that you download the slides. So you can go to yarno.ca/d3.pdf. So if you download the slides, that means that you can always look at the slides even when I switch to the editor or the web browser. So that means that you can always look at the code that is in the slides. So yeah, download that now if you want, because it's helpful. Okay. So for this workshop, we're going to use Atom. Sent instructions out a few days ago that you can download Atom. So you can download it from atom.io. And we also need to install the Atom live server. So did everybody do that?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So let's see, I have that open. So yeah, this is the Atom editor. And oh, it looks like I didn't install it myself. So this is live installing of the Atom live server. So I need to go to preferences. Where is preferences? Ah, there it is. Preferences, install, live server. There it is, install. Yeah, so I installed it on a different computer, and now I'm using this computer to do the seminar. So anyway, you can see now that it's installed. and it also appears under packages. So I'll close this. So this is the main editor that we'll use. Yeah, and it's a really nice editor. It does syntax highlighting, so if you make mistakes, you'll be able to tell from the colors probably already. So we're going to create a new folder. So that's in Atom Editor again. Add project folder. And we can put it in, I don't know, home create folder D3 test. Okay, so now we have the D3 test folder here, and that's where we'll store all our data for these for this seminar. Okay, so web pages. Web pages are basically text files that tell the web browser what means what. And if you ever looked at the source code of a website, you can see it looks like something like that. So you have like HTML, head, title, all these different tags that are encapsulated in these larger than, smaller than signs. And we'll build these together. So the first thing we're going to do is create an index.html file. So in Atom, you can go to New File, and then you click Save, and I can give it a name. So File, New File, and then you can File, Save. And it'll ask you for a name, so we will use index.html. So almost always the first page of a website is called index.html, sometimes index.php, but we'll stick to index.html. And that's the file that any web browser will open by default. So we save that. And now we have index.html here, and we can put in our HTML code. So this is the first thing we'll type in. This is the simplest website you can pretty much make. So we have the doc type, which tells you that it's an HTML file, and then you have all these tags.
I just discovered that it has snippets. So if you type in HTML, it will generate that code.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, Adam is very helpful.
Yeah, that's cool.
So yeah, this is what you're talking about. So if you type HTML, you'll get like a green symbol here, and if you press enter, it almost auto-completes everything for you, which is really nice.
Yeah, it saves a bit of time.
So in the title, you can do this is my website. So that's all in the head, and then in the body, you can put in the elements that make up the body of your HTML page. So I will use a P. So P stands for paragraph. So this is a new paragraph, and then we can do hello world, and then we can save. So yeah, this is already the most basic website you can make. But we want to view it, of course, so we can go to Packages, Atom Live Server, and we can click on Start Server. Sometimes Atom Live Server is not at the bottom, it's at the top, so you have to look for it. And if you click Start Server, it will open your web browser, and you'll see your hello world is here. And up here this is my website, so that's the title. It's also in the tab. And the nice thing about this is it's updated automatically. So if you save something in Atom, this website is automatically updated. So if I put in Hello World 2 and I save, it appears right away. So you can see what you do as you're saving the files, which is really handy. So I have also a bunch of explanation in the slides of what does what. So yeah, the head stuff is for stuff that needs to happen first before the body is loaded. So that you set the title, and later we'll load scripts here, and we'll talk about style sheets. And in the body is where the body of the web page goes. And it's also very important to always close every tag. So a thing between the smaller than and larger than symbols, that's called a tag. And every time you use that, you have to close it again. And then you close it with the slash symbol. So you can see we have HTML and then slash HTML. We have head and end head, body and body. And all these things are contained with each other. So title is contained in head, P is contained in body, and both head and body are contained in HTML. So it's a really structured language. Yeah, I guess I already did this. Oh, I guess I didn't really make it clear, but this idea is that you work along with this. So I should give you some time to type this in Atom.
If you see the editor as well, you can see that the alignment of the tags follow the what Jarno just explained.
Yep.
So they're misaligned a little bit one from the other, trying to convey the message of structure. Yeah.
Hmm. So in the meantime, I'll put the other text that I put in there. Save. And that shows up in here. So is anybody still typing? No, guess not. Okay. Sure. Yeah. So it is working for everybody with the live server. You can see the website as you're typing, or as you're saving, sorry. There's no issues with that. Okay, great. So the next thing is the CSS. So that stands for Cascading Style Sheets. And this you can use to do the makeup of your website. So you can give it the elements you put in, you can give it colors, you can change the size of it, you can even change the location, like where it's placed on the website. And that's controlled in a separate file. And it always ends on CSS. And so we'll create a new file called style.css. So I go back to the Atom editor. I go to File, New File, and then I save. And this I call style.css. And now we have a new tab with style CSS, and your index.html is still in the other tab, so you can switch back and forth between them. Okay, so this is what we're going to type in our CSS file. So we are going to say that the body should have a background color of light blue, and we want our paragraphs to have a text color of red. So body back, and you can see that Atom is being very helpful. It already knows that you're adding in a CSS file, and it has the keywords that you need. So we want the background color light blue, and you have to end on a semicolon. If you don't end on a semicolon, then things will break and you don't know what's going on. And the same for P. Red. And then when you save, you notice that nothing changes yet. And that's because we still need to link the CSS file to the HTML file. So we'll go do that next. Oh, yeah, I said that already. So we need to link it. So we go back to index.html and we add a line like this. So go back to the editor. We go to index.html and this has to be inside of the head. So we can put it in here. Link style sheets. So that tells the browser this is a style sheet, and then we have to say where it is. So we use href for that, and then we give it the style name, the file name of the style that we just made. and save. And you can see that now the colors of the text changed and the background changed. So now our style sheet is linked to the HTML file, and the style sheet takes care of all the, well, takes care of the style. Yeah. Did anybody have any problems with that?
Nope.
Okay. So next thing we're going to talk about is SVG. That stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. And that's kind of like HTML, except that it describes graphics. So you can make circles, rectangles, all that sort of things. And you can make them in the same way as you would put in the text in the HTML file. But now you're giving directions for what graphics should be. Nice things about the SVGs is that they have infinite resolution, and that means that you can zoom in as much as you want. It will always remain sharp. And that's different from pixel-based image formats, where if you zoom in too much, you can see all the squares that represent the pixels. So we're going to add those. This is the file that we already had. And now we're going to add the SVG that's under here. So we're just going to add that under the line of text. And that is here. So we have SVG. We want a width of 200 pixels and a height of 200 pixels. And we want a circle. And we want the center, the x-coordinate of the center we want to be in the middle, so that's at 100 pixels, because that's half of the width. And the y-coordinate of the center we also want in the middle, so that's again half the height. Then we have the radius, and that we also want to be half the height so that it covers the entire circle. And then, oh, the fill color. So I need to give it a color that I fill it with. So I said fill equals blue. And then I close the tag. And then I need to close the SVG tag. So the circle is contained inside of the SVG. So SVG, it creates the canvas. And then the circle is what you put in your 200 by 200 area. So I save that. And then I get a circle. So here's the center, it's at 100 by 100. The whole thing is 200 by 200, and the radius is 100. I have a loud cat in the background, sorry about that. Yeah, so did that work for anyone? Everybody?
It
Yep.
did.
Cool. And of course I have all the explanations in the slides so you can see what means what. So that's really helpful for when you try to review this later. We can also use the style sheets to paint in, to give give the colors to the SVG. So that works the same as with the HTML. So it uses the same style.css class because we loaded that in our HTML page. So we can, instead of doing fill equals blue, we can give it a class. So class, it applies to a whole class of whatever you want. So you can apply this class to other circles or other elements. And we can give it some name. So here I call it some category. So if I go back to the editor, I remove fill equals blue, and I say class is some category. So then when you save it, your circle will be totally black because it doesn't have any color information because we didn't say yet what some category should do. So to do that, we have to go to the style sheet, and I probably wrote that in the presentation. and we're going to end some category. And there, for that, we're going to say fill equals blue in CSS language. And notice that there's a period in front of it. That's important because a period in CSS file indicates that this applies to classes. So we gave the circle a class of some category, and this period indicates that this is a class. So back to the editor. And you can see that Atom is being very smart. It already knows that in index.html you have a class called some category, so it auto-completes. And I'm going to make that blue. Save. And now the circle is blue again. Yeah. Does that work for everybody again?
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. Yep. So then I should say something about the coordinate system. It is, well, upside down. So when you specify x coordinates in your SVG, that goes as you expected from left to right. But the y coordinates, they go from top to bottom. So a y coordinate of 0 means the top of your screen. And a larger y coordinate means you go down further. That's always a bit tricky. I think that's probably from the early days when we still had CRT monitors that scanned from the top to the bottom. But that's just the way it is.
For me, it took me a while to figure that one out. Like I
Yeah.
scratched my head for a couple of days before I realized that.
Yeah, no, it's a very tricky one, so I thought I would mention this. Okay, so there are a lot of other shapes. You're not confined to circles, like there's rectangles, ellipses, lines, polylines. So a polyline is a line that goes to a point, then another point, and then another point, and another point, etc. And there's also polygon, which does the same thing, except that at the end, it automatically goes to the beginning, so it always makes a closed form. And if that's not enough, you can also use path. Path is it's actually a language on its own. You put in the points and then you describe at the points how the curve should be. Should it be like a right angle like we have here, or should it be like smooth? And then finally there's also G, and G you can use to group shapes together. We won't really use that one, but just for completeness sake, I put it in here. There's a great link there's a great site at mozilla.org. They have all the SVG shapes in there. So if I open that, you can see all the shapes. You can see how to manipulate them, like the colors of the lines, polylines, polygons, they're all there. You can see here the path with the very obtuse language. So this is you move to 20, 20, 30, then Q is a special kind of point that I think makes a smooth edge. And yeah, that's all these letters. So those are definitely the most complicated ones. We won't use them. We'll just stick to circles and rectangles. And close that. So what we have now is we have a simple website with style, and we have a simple SVG in this website also with style. But so far everything has been static. And now we're going to use D3. So here we'll learn how to load the library, how to use the library, and also how to load external data from CSV files. So yeah, D3 is a JavaScript library, so it's basically a programming language. It also makes it hard to spot errors, but fortunately browsers have something called developer tools, and it allows you to see what's going on. So if I go back to my browser and I press F12, I get this screen here on the right. I have elements and I have console. So the console is where errors will show up, and elements, it shows you the layout of your website. So we have the hello world, another line of text, which is what we had in our HTML file. Here's our SVG. And you can see as you mouse over on the left screen, it gets highlighted. And you can expand things. So here we have the circle inside of our CVG. so you can see exactly what the HTML looks like that your browser is seeing. I mean, now we have our HTML nice and clean in this file here. But now we're going to use D3, and we're going to use D3 to automatically add elements to our HTML structure. And then it's not so clear anymore. And then this elements thing will be very, very helpful. So that's F12 on almost every browser, except for Safari, where it's Command Option I. So now we're going to load our JavaScript in the file. So we go back to index.html, and we want to load a script. And this script needs to be inside of the head again. So we do script, and then we say the source equals https d3.js.org. And then we use version 5. Not actually sure if that's the latest version anymore. It's good enough. Oop. And we close the tag again. Grip. There we go. Not sure where the colors disappeared there.
Yeah, that's my thought as well.
Okay.
Close the file and reopen it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I guess there's still some bugs in Atom there. Anyway, colors are back. So we now load the script from the D3.js website, and now we can use D3 in our own HTML file. So then we need to create a script. So we're going to create a new file again called input.js. So you go back to the editor, file, new file, and then save. We call that input.js. You can call it anything you want. It's convenient if it ends on JS, because then you know it's a JavaScript file. And now we have the input.js. We still need to load that in our own web page. So that's what we do here. So we go to index.html. We are going to load the script. And this time the script has to go at the bottom. And the reason for that is that this script works on the elements that are already in your HTML file. So that means that your HTML file has already have to be loaded before you can manipulate them. So the browser really reads it from the top to the bottom. So it reads everything in, all these elements are loaded, and then your script is loaded and executed. And then because it's at the bottom, it already knows about all the stuff that's above it. So now this line will input, this line input.js that will load our script. And we're going to create two new elements that it can work on. So I'm going to make a div, and I call that my text. And I'm going to make another SVG. So a div is like a container in HTML where you can put other things in. ID gives it one unique ID, so this has to be unique in your HTML page, and it allows you to reference this element pretty quickly. And the same with another SVG, we give it an ID of mygraph. So we can use mygraph to refer to this specific SVG element, and we can use mytext to refer to this specific div element. And that's what we're going to use in input.js. So we can save this. And then if we look in our website, then we have the debugger open. We can see our div ID mytext is here. And on the left, you can see it appear as well. You don't see anything because there's nothing in there. And the SVG is there as well, which is totally empty, so you don't see it, but it's there. So this already shows you that in the debugger of the browser, you can see what's going on. And that's the explanation. So yeah, so now we have 3 files. We have, actually, did everybody type that? I sometimes go too fast.
No, it's good.
Yeah, okay. So we have now 3 files: index.html, style.css, and input.js. And the HTML file, it does the text and structure. The style does the color and position. And the input.js is the executable code. So now we're going to play with dynamic text. So we're going to open input.js again, and we're going to type some text in it. And the text we're going to type is this one. So D3 is your JavaScript library. The dot means you're going to call a function of that D3 library. So we're going to select my text, and that's the div that we just created in our HTML file. You'll have the hashtag sign to indicate that it has to be the ID my text. And then we're going to append a paragraph to that element, and we're going to give a text to that paragraph. So we're going to type that. We go to input.js, D3, select, and we want my text. And Adam already knows what you're meaning, so that's good. And to that element, we're going to append a paragraph. And then to that paragraph, we're going to append, so we're going to operate, sorry, we're going to use the text function to put in some text. So hello dynamic world. And then save. And then we go back to the browser, and you can see hello dynamic world. And if you look at my text, you can expand it, and you can see it added a new p element. And that p element is not in your HTML file. It's being dynamically generated by the D3 library. So this already gives you some insight, and you can see how D3 works. So you select something, and then you manipulate it, like you append elements, and you set the properties for it. And that's what D3 does. So did that work for anybody?
Yep, it did.
Cool. And that's all the things I just said. And we can do the same with shapes. So this whole bunch of text is going to make another circle, a pink circle this time. So we're going to back to the editor, and this is still in input.js. So now D3, select my graph, because now we're going to use the SVG element. We're going to say width is 200 pixels. So the ATTR stands for attribute. So we're going to change the attribute of the SVG, the width attribute of SVG, we're going to change to 200 pixels. And the same for the height. And then for that SVG, we're going to append a circle. And we're going to set the center of the circle, the x-coordinate of that, to 100. And the same for the y. And we're going to set the radius. Oops. And we're going to set the fill, which gives it the color. So I will use it for pink or something like that. Actually, you probably may have noticed that I used 100px, and in here I have 100. So the default unit is in pixels, so that's what the px stands for. So this actually means the same thing. And I'm going to save that. And now we have a beautiful pink circle. This is also the reason why I should be kept away from any website design, because it looks horribly ugly, actually. Yeah, so did that work for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So you may wonder that now we have this giant code, and before we just had this much smaller code, which was arguably more readable. But the nice thing about the D3 version is that it's all dynamic. So now that we can dynamically generate these circles, we can actually dynamically change properties. So we can change the x coordinate or the y coordinate or the radius based on data. So that's going to be the data-driven part. And the website is now going to dynamically change depending on the inputs. So for now, we're going to create some data in our JS file, and later we'll load it from a CSV file. So we go back to input.js, go all the way to the top, and we make a new, what's called an array, that contains some numbers. So my number data, put in some numbers there. Not sure what my other number was, doesn't really matter too much. And we also load some text data. Give it some text. So var means we are creating a new variable, and this is the name of our variable, my number data or my text data, and then what it contains. So these square brackets means it's an array. So that means that my number data contains a list of numbers, 100, 400, 303, 80, 40. And the same for text data. It contains, sorry?
Are all the numbers on the array integers?
Yeah.
Okay. Like can we use floating as well, or it's
Yeah, you can use floating as well. You can
Okay.
use anything you want.
Okay.
I think you can actually mix numbers and text, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Okay. So now we have some data that we can play with. And that's what I said, so that's good. And now we're going to use that data. So we're going to go back to our input file. We have the select my text here, and we used to have append p, and we said hello dynamic world, but we're going to change that. So we're going to use select all p. So that means we're going to work on new paragraphs. And now we're going to load our data. So we say data, my text data. And then we're going to enter our text set. Then we're going to enter our data center. Sorry, then we're going to enter our data set. Okay. And the rest can stay the same. So we're going to work on the paragraphs, and we're going to use the data set, my text data, and we enter into that data set. So anything that happens after that enter will be done for every element in my text data. So if begin, middle, and end. So for each element in my text data, we're going to append a new paragraph and set the text to hello dynamic worlds. So if we save that, we go to the browser. You can see now we have 3 entries of hello dynamic world, and that corresponds to the 3 entries that we had here. Like if we add another one and save it, you get a 4th. Well, that's almost useful, but really we want to have the text in there, of course. So we're going to do that next. Yep. We're going to change the text function to contain a function. And the function is going to take elements from the dataset. Oops. Here we go. So instead of text hello dynamic world, we can get rid of that. And we put in a function with the arguments d and I. and then we're going to return D. So D, oh, sorry, yeah.
No, I was going to ask what's D and I.
Yeah, exactly. So the function D and I, it takes two arguments. The first one is the data, and I is the number of the data. And what I mean with that is,
the element on the data?
yeah.
Okay.
So for every data point, we have append P, and then we have this text with the function. So this function takes D, which corresponds to begin, for the first data element, and then it does this for the next append. It takes the next one, so D corresponds to middle, and then for the next one, D corresponds to end. So D is your data element, I guess, and I is a position, and that starts to count from 0. So for the first one, this is going to be 0, 1, 2. So if you save this, it should, yeah, say begin, middle, end. Yeah. Is anybody having any trouble with that?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So we can also, instead of return D, we can do return I. If you do that, it changes to the number. So it shows you that I corresponds to the entry, so 0, 1, 2. And we can change it to D again, and we get the text. And that's what I want. Yeah, so D is a data item, and I is the index. So now we're already making dynamic elements based on data, and we can do the same for the SVG. So now we're going to use the other data one, which is my number data, because we want numbers for this one. So we have to make some changes. So we have the attributes, that's all fine, but then we need to say that we're going to work on the circles again. So select all, like before, and then circle. And we need to load the data, my number data, and then we need to enter the data set. So we added these 3 lines. So we're going to say we're going to work on circles. We want to use the dataset my number data, and then we enter into that dataset. And then all the rest will work on each element of my number data. So we should get 5 things that are 100, 400, 303, 80, and 40. And I mean, if you already save it now, it will generate 5 circles for you. But if you look in the browser, you only can see 1 circle. And that's because the 5 circles all have the same values, so they're all on the same position and the same size. And you can only see it if you expand the elements. You can actually see the 5 circles that are all on top of each other. So we're going to enter data in that. We're going to use our data for that. So instead of saying 100 pixels, we're going to remove that, and we're going to use the function di as before, and then return, and then we need to say at what x coordinates this circle should appear. We could use d, but then you would get 1 circle at 100 and 1 circle at 400. So that's way out of range, and that's not very useful. So we're going to use a formula instead. We're going to use 100 plus 100 times I. Oh, sorry, there was one more change you needed to make. The width, it should no longer be 200 pixels, it should be 100%. And 100% means it covers the entire screen. So that gives you more room to work with. So what this means is you start at 100 and you add 100 times I to it for every element. So for the first one, this is element 0. So we get 100 plus 100 times 0. Well, 100 times 0 is 0, so the first one will be at 100. The next one, this is element 1. So that will be 100 plus 100 times 1, it's 200, etc. So you'll get 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500. And you can actually already save it. And then you can see we get 5 circles that are overlapping with each other. but we want to use the data. So we're going to use the radius for that to represent that. So function di return, and we want to use d, but d goes all the way to 400, and our SVG element only has a height of 200, so that would be way outside of the box. So we're going to make it smaller. We just divide by 8. And now we get 5 circles, where the radius depends on what number you put in here. And now you can change numbers as well. And you can see the change. So now we're already working on the data. So did that work for people? Or it's still typing? I still hear some typing actually.
Yeah, it's me. I'm catching up.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's working here.
Yeah, we're going way faster than the last time I taught this, because there's less people.
That should do it. Yeah, works.
Yeah, so you can try changing the numbers. You can see that it automatically updates the websites based on those numbers.
Cool.
And we can do the style sheets again. So before we had attribute fill pink, but we can use the attribute class. Oops, that's it. Yeah, okay. And the class is going to make it some category. So now it's going to use the sum category from the class, sum category fill. It's now going to use that for my graph. So if I save this, it should be blue. Yeah, it's the same blue as here. And we can change the color if you want to red. And you can see that both the circles change because both have the same style sheet, sorry, the same class, sum category.
So Jarno, you can almost replace jQuery with this.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I guess they're quite equivalent actually.
Yeah, I don't know that they do the same thing though.
Yeah, jQuery is probably more advanced, right? Because, I mean, I'm trying to figure out what D3 could do that jQuery can't do. I mean, D3 is more oriented on making graphs and that sort of stuff. jQuery also does a whole lot of networking stuff.
Okay. Maybe I didn't use this part. But over the year, I think jQuery became smaller and smaller with like the basic JavaScript function becoming more advanced.
Oh, yeah, right. jQuery was invented to make sense of it all, I guess.
Yeah, it's meant to disappear eventually, I think.
Huh.
But it's cool stuff for D3 though.
Yeah, I mean, you can make really pretty stuff. Just takes work. Yes, so this is a small exercise that you can do. You can try changing the data. I already did that a bit, so you can try it out yourself too. If you change some nifty numbers or some of the text, you can see it automatically updates in the website. But I'm guessing most of you already did that. So I'll just go to the next one. So yeah, now we can dynamically create a website, and we can add text, and we can add graphics to it, and we can use data and use that data to generate the content. So that's pretty neat already. Oops. So now we're going to create a bar chart, and this is your turn. So we have all the tools. Instead of circles, we'll now use rectangles because we're going to make a bar chart. So this is what a rectangle looks like in SVG. x coordinate, and the y coordinate is one of the points, the upper left. Yeah, upper left. And then you can give it the width and the height, and that allows you to create a rectangle. So you can use that for a bar in your bar chart. And what we want to create is something like this. So a bar chart based on the data that we already have. So we have here my number data, and I want to create a bar chart that looks like this. So the first step you should do is create another SVG element, give it a name, and then try to create a bar chart in the website. So I'll give you some time for that. About 10 minutes. So 10:03 should be good. Okay, so that was 10 minutes. Somebody still working?
Almost
Well,
there.
yeah, for me, I'm only able to draw the first bar. I don't know why it's not iterating through the array.
Do they
I
show
was
up in the what's called? Do they show up here in the elements?
let me take a look. Developers inspector.
You can also check console for errors, by the way.
Yeah, it's actually drawn there. I mean,
Okay.
it's there, but it's not representing graphically.
So that might mean that they're on top of each other.
Okay, sure.
Because if you look in the graph, you can see, well, you should have rects, but you can see the coordinates here.
Yep, okay. Okay, that makes sense, yeah. There might be stacked in one pile, yeah. So what I need to add, that's the décalage. Huh? Yeah, sure. So I need to add this. Attributes X.
Jarno, is there like a less verbose way to write, let's say, a rectangle? Like where you could put just all the specs or like the parameter of the rectangle?
No, I think you have to do it one by one.
Okay.
I mean, you only have to do it once, I suppose.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I'll start writing my solution that I have here. So let's see. SVG. Guess I can just copy that. Sorry.
So, so Jarno, the Y position for the rectangle is actually the top of the rectangle, and the height is the distance to set the bottom of the rectangle.
Yep, that's right.
Seems a bit.
So that's let's see, where is that? This one.
Yeah, I tried setting my rectangles to have a negative height and was kind of surprised that it didn't work. Is there like a more intuitive way, I guess, to set some of these properties, or I guess that's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, the way I did it is I started with the height. Let's see, where is it? So yeah, I started with the height and I've subtracted the value.
Right.
And then the height is always the same. Let's see, that's this one here. And I get my bar chart here. Actually, now that I look at my solution, I think I'm cheating a bit. Oh no, it's right. Sorry. Yeah, it's right. So yeah, it's very similar to what we had for the circle. So we have the same attributes. I made the height, I made bigger so I could fit more in there. So that's why my bars are much higher. And then instead of select all circle, I did select all rect. I still use the same my number data. And then the X function, it's similar to what we had for the circle, except we have the upper left point. Upper left point. So we're going to start at 0, then 40, 80, 120, etc. So I times 40. And then my Y value, like you said, you have to start at the top. So the Y value depends on your data, and it goes from the top. So I have 400 minus D. My width is fixed at 35. So I take steps of 40, and the width is 35. So that means that the gap in between is going to be 5. And then the height is directly from the data. So you can change the data. And automatically change the bar chart. Which is pretty cool. So is there anybody that does not have a working bar chart? Because we're going to use it for the next part.
No, well, I managed to fix it, so. Yep.
So it was the x coordinate for you?
Sorry?
It was the x coordinate for you?
Yeah, I was missing the coordinate. Define the attribute for x coordinates. Yep.
Yeah. I guess one thing I haven't showed yet is if you make like a misspelling, like you have return, which is obviously wrong. If you save that, it breaks here. But you can see here in the debugger uncaught syntax error, which means that the syntax is wrong. So I misspelled something. And you can also see it in line 30 of input.js. So if I go there, that's right here. And you can see that's exactly where my error is.
Yeah, I guess in my case, it wasn't an error. It was doing what I was instructing it, right? Which is draw one rectangle on top of the other.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean you specifically.
No. It's okay. I mean, it's not an error. What happened to me? It's yeah.
Well, it's still an error, but it's not a syntax error.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, now we've got these cool bar charts. It's pretty neat. And now we're going to use that to load external data. I'm actually going extremely rapidly through all my slides. I don't think this is going to take 3 hours. Yeah, there's just a few left. You guys want a break of 10 minutes or something?
Sure. I could take 10 minutes. I don't know the rest.
Sure.
Yeah, okay. I'll be back at 10:20.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
Okay, that was about 10 minutes. Okay, let's see. Share screen. So yeah, we should all have the working bar charts now. So let's go back to the presentation. You can see my screen again, right? Because it's always a bit finicky. Hello?
Yes, sorry, my
yeah.
unmute button, it's playing tricks. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we have the bar chart. Where is my presentation? Here, it's up there. So yeah, loading of the external data. So yeah, we've got a bar chart now, so we can make graphs, which is nice. But the data is still inside of our input file, in our input.js file, and that's probably not the best way for it. You really want something that loads data externally, like you have a CSV file somewhere, and then you can just load that through D3. It also supports other formats like TSV or JSON. Here we'll be using CSV because it's a nice, easy format, like the comma separated values, which is what CSV stands for. So we'll use that. And we're going to use an example dataset, Canadian women's labor force participation, and it shows the wages that women get versus the wages that men get. And then you can see the discrepancy over the years. The link is the reference to that dataset, but we will be loading the CSV file directly. And the way that works is using D3.csv. And it's kind of a big function, so I'll go through it. And so we have D3 again, which is our library, and then we have the function CSV that loads this big URL, which is the CSV file that contains our data. So I can actually load it. You can see what it looks like or not. Why can't I select you? Okay, there we go. Maybe I shouldn't have opened it in that. Let's see. I can open this in Atom actually. There we go. So this is what it looks like. It's just a bunch of comma separated values. And the first line is the header, so it explains what every column means. And then we have the years, participation, forget what TFR means, wages for men, wages for women, depth, part-time, all that stuff. We'll only be focused on these two columns, but you can use the other ones as well if you want. So that's loaded here in the CSV file. And then the next argument is a function. And the function that lets you reformat the data, or you can also fix data if you know there is some error in the data, but you don't have control over the data yourself because it's hosted by somebody external. You can manipulate the data in here before it's returned to the function. So the next one is then. Then executes when the data is loaded. So you load your CSV file, it downloads it to your browser, and then when the downloading is complete, it will execute the then function. And that's where you actually do something with your data. And if there's an error, then there is catch. So if, for instance, the network connection or the server is down and you can't access the file, then it goes to the catch and it tells you what the error is. So that lets you make a more robust website, because if you cannot load the data and you just get a blank website because it can't load the data, then it's not very informative. So it's better to show an error. So we're going to do that. We're going to go back to our editor. Where did I put that? Here. We don't need that file anymore. And we're going to input.cs. And we're going to put this above our bar chart because we're going to use the data that we load from the CSV. So D3 CSV and that big URL thing. You can also copy paste stuff from the PDF, by the way. That also works. Yeah, comma function I. So this is the function for formatting the data. And we're going to format it a bit. We're going to introduce a new column called average wages. And that's going to be the average of men and women wages. So this is a column that's not in the original data set, but we can add additional data just like that. So we want to return, and then we use the curly brackets to indicate well, it's called a dictionary, but what it does is you can give it a name and then colon, and then you can put in the data that you want. And this horrible thing here, it converts the years from a string into a number that, no, how do I say that? Yeah, okay, so I should open the CSV file again. Reopen last item. Yeah, so our CSV file, it had an empty column, and we want to address that empty column. Normally, we can use D, which is the data. So here our data is an entire row, and every one of these is a single entry for D. So when we do the function, oops, when we do the function di, the D corresponds to a row, and we want to get the year. The year column does not have a name, but men wage and wim wage do have names. So in that case, you can do d dot men wage or d dot wom wage, and that will get you this column or this column. But because this one doesn't have a name, you cannot do d dot nothing. So instead, you have to use this function here, object dot values d 0. So 0 means the first column. So it gets the first entry, which is the first column. And if you remember, JavaScript counts from 0, like a 0, 1, 2, so 0 is the first one. So yeah, that's a bit complicated, but this is how you address data where you do not have column names. So the year is stored in our year. Then men wage is the men wage. And we want this to be a number and not a string. And the trick in JavaScript for doing that is adding a plus to it. And that converts any string into an integer, a number that you can do calculations with. Because JavaScript is kind of weird in that like it will happily add two strings together, or it will add a string to a number, and the results that you get are sometimes not what you expect. So you can have instances where you add 1 plus 1, and then you get 11, because it's the letter 1 plus the letter 1 becomes 1, 1, 11. So you might have to make sure that it's actually interpreted as a number, and you can do that by adding a plus to the beginning. And then the same for women wage. And then we want to make a new column that didn't exist before. So we take the average of this value plus, I guess I should put that in brackets, otherwise it doesn't understand what the plus means. Brackets and this one, and then divided by 2. So that gets you the average of the 2 paychecks. So now we have the function that processes the data, and it returns a new data object that has a year, men wage, wim wage, and average wage. And we ignore the rest of the data. So we don't care about partic, TFR, depth, and part time. we simply discard it and only use these four. So now we have data, and then we have to use that for the next function. So if I go back one slide, that was this first part. That was a function to format the data, which we did. So next step is to use then. And that's where we actually do something with the data. So that's where we're going to generate our bar chart. And that's the code that we already had. So we can put that inside of there. And that is, oh, I guess that's all the explanations I just did. Did I forget anything? Yeah, okay, I said that already. Yeah, so now the bar chart that we had, it goes inside of the then function. Oops. So here's our CSV function, and then and the function data. So then takes a function as an argument, and the function has an argument data, and data is the result of this. So our data object will contain all these columns with this as rows. And then we can take our bar charts, this whole thing, we can cut it and paste it in there. And then we need to make sure it works on the data. So instead of my number data, we should use data. That should correspond to this thing here. Like you can give this another name, but this has to match. The name doesn't matter as long as it matches. So we'll just call it data because it's data. I still works, but D does not work anymore because D in the beginning it corresponded to a number, but now it corresponds to this thing. So D has year, D has man wage, D has woman wage, D has average wage, and we have to specify what we have to use. So we can plot the women's wages first, and we use the period to indicate that we want the woman wage, this one, from D. So if we save that, then we should get, oh, didn't quite work. Let's see what went wrong there. Did I mistype something? I don't have any errors in here, so that's good. Here's my bar chart. Height is very small. Oh, I guess I know what it is. The height is very small, and these numbers are probably exactly what's in the CSV file, so let's check that. Oh, the return part. Thanks, Xiao. Yeah, so the return part is exactly these small numbers. So they're very small, which means that the heights will be very small. So we need to address that. And that's similar to what we did with the circles. We multiply something with it. Let's see what I chose. I chose 10 times. So I made the column 10 times as large. So I should do that now. 10 times, 10 times. Save. There we go. That looks like an actual bar chart. I guess it doesn't fit on my screen because I made them too large. If I close this, yeah. So you can see this is the average wage. Sorry, this is the wage for women as a function of the year. So you can see it goes up. So is everybody able to reproduce this? It's quite a lot of typing, so I'll give you some time for that.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah, exactly. Just typing the URL is horrible. Yeah, it's also tricky to get all the curly brackets and the normal brackets right. It's always a great source for errors.
Got it.
Cool. Is anybody still typing or having issues? Well, silence is good, I guess. Okay. So now we've got, we've got data that comes directly from our CSV file that we just load from an external resource. So that's really great. So now we have a dynamic website that reacts to data. But something could go wrong, like the server could be down. So we're going to look at the error handling. And that's what we're going to use the catch function first. So let's see if I go back to this thing. So we did the formatting, we did the then part where we did something with our data. And then there's still the catch part where we can show an error if something went wrong. So that's what we're going to do now. That's this part here. So we go back to our editor at the end there. So we have the then function. You can see that the brackets match. There's a small underline thingy there, blue, that matches here. So we're going to catch. And like then, it takes a function. And argument, we can call it whatever we want. I'll just call it error. And then curly brackets. And this is the code that will be executed if there's an error. And error will contain a text describing the error. So we select the bar chart. You don't have to select the bar chart, but I will select the bar chart because I'm going to put in an error there instead of the bar chart that's supposed to be drawn. So I'm going to manipulate the bar chart element to show the error. You could also do something like show a status bar somewhere else, and then you would select that with D3. So I set the attributes again. That's the same as before. So it has the same dimensions. And if you give something the same dimensions as what was supposed to be there, that means that the layout of your website will remain the same, which is nice. Doesn't always need to be the same. Like I could make it half, which is also works. And then, but I'll set it to the same for now. So now we have an SVG with the ID bar chart, and we've given it a width of 100% and a height of 450 pixels, which is the same as what the bar chart should have been. And then I'm going to append text to this. So text is an SVG element. If you look back all the way and you find that link to the Mozilla page, there's an element called text, and that just puts text anywhere you want. And you can put it anywhere you want, so you have to say where it needs to go. So there's an X coordinate, and we can say 50%. So that means that this text will appear in the middle. And we can say that Y we want to put in the middle as well, so that's half that, which is 225. And then we put in our text, and the text is error. So that corresponds to this one. And again, you could give it a different name. It would also work. I'll just keep it error because that's what it is. And then I save. And my bar chart is still there. But if I make an error if the file doesn't exist, for instance, I just change that to non-existing thing, at least I hope so. It disappeared. And now I get my error. So error, that's the error that you get when you go to a non-existent server. And it will say failed to fetch because it was unable to find the data. So instead of showing the bar chart, it now shows failed to fetch. And you can compare that to if I did not have a catch thing, then it's just gone, like you don't have any information at all. So having an error is really helpful because it shows you that something went wrong. I put in letters here, but now I forget what the original URL was. Like that? Yeah, okay. So I'll leave you some time to type that up. And you can try, I think you can also get other errors if you misspell the file name. What does that say? Oh, 404. So that means not found. So the server exists, but the file does not exist. Actually, it probably also shows in the console if you... not sure about it. If I remove the error text here and I make an error here, does it show? Yeah, okay. It also shows you in the console because you don't catch the error, then it goes over here. But most people would not look at this when something breaks on their website, so it's better to catch the error and show it on the screen. So did everybody manage to type this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, so multiple columns. So now we've used one column. We've shown the data for women, but we want to compare it to men. So we also want to show the data for men. So we want to do that is we have to split the code somehow. Because if you look at it, we have our code here. So we select the bar chart, we select the rectangles, we take the data, and we append the rectangles. But then how do you enter more data? Like this all works on what came previously. So we have to split it. And the way to split it is we can give this a variable name, like I think I call it SVG, but you can call it whatever you want. You can call it bar SVG or whatever. You just give it a name. And then you break it here and add the SVG here. So now I select my elements, I give it a width and height, and that element is now stored in SVG. So now I can use SVG to select the rectangle and add all my stuff. And then I can copy this whole thing and put it in there twice. So now I have two of them, and they both work on SVG. So they'll both create bar charts everywhere. And now we can make one the women wages and the other the male wages. Let's see, just set that. Yeah, so SVG now contains our element bar chart, and then we can use that to add rectangles to it separately. Yeah, so now we're going to make the man weights, and we're going to make them red so they are distinguished from the women wages. So the first one will change to women wages. Sorry, man wages. So that becomes men, that becomes men, and we want to make that red. So I draw the men weights first and then the women weights because I'm expecting men wages to be higher. And since they are being plotted on the same x values and the same y values, they'll overlap. So if I would reverse this, then there would be a smaller column behind a bigger column. You wouldn't see anything. But in this order, I have I first draw a large column, and then I draw a small column, so that goes on top of the one, so you can still see both of them. If that's a bit cryptic, I'll show you what I mean soon. So I save that, and I can see these are the red bars, so those corresponds to the men wages, but I cannot see the other ones anymore. So something went wrong there. And what went wrong is the select all here. So when I select all, I select the existing rectangles. And that works fine when there are no rectangles, because there are none. So you get an empty set, and then the data is added to it. But if I select it again, then I select the existing rectangles and replace them. So that causes, that causes issues. So what I instead want to do is I want to distinguish these things. And I can distinguish them by using classes. So I probably have it in the slides. Why did that not work? Yes. So yeah, so select all no longer contains the empty set to add to. So then you replace data. So you need to make sure that the set is empty. So instead we'll use a class. So we'll use the class men, and we'll use the class women. So I go back to my data. So this is men. And I add the attributes class is men. So this syntax here, rect.men, dot indicates that it's a class. The next thing is a class. So I want the rectangles of class men. And here I create the rectangles of class men. You can do the same here, woman, and give it the attribute class women. Save. And now you can see you get the red ones. So from bottom to the top, the red ones is the male wages, and from bottom to top in black is the women wages. And that's exactly what you want to show. So I'll give you some time to type that up.
Shouldn't we put them side by side so it would be more intuitive?
Yeah, sure, you can do that. If you want to do that, you can change the X. So we have, for the women, we have I plus 40. So if you want to put them, sorry?
So like time 20 and then plus 20 or something like this?
It should still be times 40 because you still want the same positions, but you just want to halve the width of these things. So if you change the width to half that, and then the women have to go to a little offset like that. Ooh, look at that. Yeah, that's what you mean, right?
Well, yeah. Now we see it's really unfair.
Yeah.
I'm getting that the SVG dot select all, it's not a function. Trying to understand why. Yeah. SVG dot select all, and then the name. Yeah, it's complaining about something. Type error SVG select all is not a function.
If you're feeling brave, you can share your screen.
Yeah, sure.
I think I may need to enable that for you though, because you're just an attendee. Presenter. Okay, you should be able to share now.
Okay, let me find that. Where is it? Share screen here. And then it's this one. Oops. View.
Oh, I see. So you forgot assigning a value to SVG. So you're missing the line that says var SVG equals D3.select.
It's not here. This one.
Oh no, it's in the wrong position.
Oh, okay, so this.
Yeah, it has to go on line 59.
Here. Okay.
Yeah. So SVG corresponds to the element bar chart. And
okay.
where you had it
Okay.
before, it corresponds to the
Yeah,
entire
to the
CSV
whole.
file.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
And that one didn't have select all, so that's why you
Yeah,
get that error.
that worked. Okay. Yeah. Sure. First. Thanks.
Sure. And then it's my turn again. Yeah, there we go. Actually, I should put this back to what I had before. There we go. So I'm still in sync with the slides. Although I must admit the other presentation looked prettier. Yeah, so now it's your turn again. So you can try changing the numbers. So with that, I mean the positions like we did before. So Augustine's suggestion of putting them side by side. And you can also try plotting the average weights. And if you're feeling really fancy, you can try to use style.css to change the bar colors. Because we assigned classes to the column. So one column had the class women and the other one had the class men. So you can change the colors from the CSV file instead. And you can also try adding the years underneath, because now we have, oops, now we just have nothing underneath that, so you don't even see what year this corresponds to. So that's a lot of exercises. I'll give you, 15 minutes for that. So that's 11. Is that right? Yeah, 11:11. So we'll be back at, or I mean, you have until 11. You have until 11:11 to finish these things, and then we'll go through them.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, this was 15 minutes. So did anybody run into any trouble? Like the appending years with append text is maybe a bit hard.
Yeah, I was trying to do this, and then when I do text like d.year, it doesn't show up. But if I put static text, it's working. Like if I put hello,
Oh.
it's working. So I don't know. Do I have to do something special to kind of translate the d.year into string, or?
Did you put it in as a function?
Not at all. Okay, that's why.
Okay. Let's see. I'm not sure if I kept that somewhere. SVG.
Okay, it's working now.
Okay, great.
Do we have the data until let's say last year, or
I'm not sure when that data set. How far does it go?
75?
Okay. Yeah, it's an old data set, I guess. There are several open repositories, like Ottawa has an open repository, Ontario has an open repository. I think even at the federal levels, there are open data repositories.
Okay.
So yeah, there might be more up-to-date info out there. I guess this is the same as that. Let's see, did that do it? Oh, yeah, there we go. In one go. Yeah, so this is the probably similar to what you had, Agustin, for adding the text. So you select all the text, and then the same as before, but you append on text elements. And then you set the x and y to the right values. And then function di for returning the year. And that creates the years underneath here.
Yeah, that's what I had.
Yeah.
I just have a question regarding the select all. It seems a bit strange that you're selecting all, and then for element you're creating right after. Like because you put like let's say rectangle dot women,
Mm-hmm.
but then you're kind of setting up the element as you go.
Yeah, that's kind of a quirk of D3. I mean, it's meant for later updating the data. So if you have new data that's dynamic or whatever, you can use the select all to overwrite the data you had before.
So the first time it's like selecting nothing, and then it create the data, and after that it's just like reprocessing the data. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, for some reason it has to start with an empty set. So select all text. You get an empty set of texts that it adds the text to.
So would it let's say you would have like the data locally on the machine, and you would change some data. It wouldn't refresh automatically on the web page, right?
No, correct.
Okay, so you would have to have like you need to load the data a little bit like Vue.js where you have like the data, and if you change the data, like it automatically refresh on the web page. You would have to load them, and then I don't know if you have to activate something that keep like an eye on the data to see if there's a change.
Like a timer or something. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that reprocess thing is just rewriting the whole page all the time because you do a refresh, or?
Yeah, I mean, you could also have like a drop-down menu where you have different URLs. So then you could select a different data source and your website would update dynamically with the new data.
So only this zone would be updated, not the whole page. Like the repaint would be only for the rectangle you mentioned that is sourced by this data.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Any more people that ran into trouble? Or still working?
This is only handling like the visual, right? It's not handling the input. So let's say you want to handle key press. Are you going through D3, or you're like you have to use another library or JavaScript directly and then doing whatever you
No, you can go through D3. So D3 allows a lot of interactivity as well. I don't really touch upon that in this course, but
It's like D3 dot watch keyboard for letters or like arrows or something like this.
yeah, something like that. So I have a list of further resources, and one of them is the D3 website.
Okay, now I'll take a look.
Yeah. Let's see, there's
Perfect.
probably examples about that.
Interaction. Yeah.
Oh yeah, interaction. Yeah, one
Okay.
of these probably. Yeah, so we're actually done quite early. Last time I didn't make it to the end, and now we have 40 minutes to spare. So
I think we're a class of a gifted student. That's how I see it.
that's probably it. Like last time, people had trouble getting Atom to be installed on their laptop, so I spent some time on that. But now everybody was prepared, so that was nice. Oh, that's the wrong link. This was supposed to be LinkedIn Learning. So LinkedIn Learning has a lot of stuff about using D3. So LinkedIn Learning, search for D3. So yeah, LinkedIn Learning, everybody here has access to that. You can log in with your UAuto credentials. I'll update the link in the slides before I send those again to you. But they'll go through much more than I do. Like there is 4 hours and 38 on just D3 for data scientists, and there's another course for 2 hours. So that's triple what I did. So there's a lot of resource on there, and they're actually pretty good. I looked at them as well. Yeah, the other one is D3.js. They have a lot of resources on there as well. And another nice thing is blocks.org. That has tons and tons of examples of things that you can look at, like pie charts, random graph generator. So you can basically look for something that is close to what you want and then yeah, base it on that. I thought there were more than this though. Not sure where they went. Because these are just the popular ones. Anyway, the D3 site has lots of examples as well. You can get gears. You can do this all with D3. And then underneath you have the entire code. It's running in your browser. And it tells all the complicated stuff. So this is one of those paths. So like in the beginning, and I mentioned there were as a SVG, you had a path element, and all these cryptic codes. They use that to draw these gears.
One important attribute of the SVGs is that you can define layers. So if you guys ever worked with Adobe Illustrator or any graphical vector imaging software, you can pile things on top of each other. So I was just a second ago reading about that you can define different layers on your D3 applications, and you can print different stuff on top of each other.
Yeah, that's the G attribute, right?
Yeah, it's related to that, yes.
Yeah, I guess if you're using a SVG, you would probably like create them in a different software and just import them.
Yeah.
Like if they're complicated.
Yeah, exactly, because the SVG file, you can import them, and then you can edit them, the interactive parts with D3, just by selecting the parts that you want. This looks very spacey. Anyway, there are loads of different examples here, so you can pick one you like and work from that. Or you can start from scratch like we did here. We just created a simple bar chart, but you can use whatever you want. You can draw lines, and the coordinates are based on your data sources, and you can make it as crazy as you want. Yeah, but you'll have to do some programming to use it. Well, I guess everybody already knows me, but that's what I do.
Everybody knows you.
Sorry?
Everybody knows you.
Yeah, at least in this group. Yeah, anyway, feel free to contact me about all this stuff.
Thank you very much, Arno. I really appreciate this intro. It's really cool what you've put together.
Yeah, and I'll put the videos online too, so they'll appear on the website.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it very, very much.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you,
again.
Arno.
Thanks.
Sure.
Have a good day, guys.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thanks. Have a good day.
You too.